All right, so let's begin with the animation. So for the animation, what I'm going to do is that firstly, we can just go ahead and merge the two viewports. So just right click, join areas. Whichever one you're going to click is going to disappear. So just click this one. And now what we can do is we can actually, never mind, I forgot to add a texture to this. So let me just add, I forgot to change the texture of this to golden. That's fine. Okay. So what we can do is we can, actually, let me just pull up this animation once again so that we can see where to start. So let's start with this shot right here. So this is basically the shot of the logo at the back right here. But the problem with this was that it was basically upside down. So we're going to have to basically just sort of turn the watch upside down like that. And now we can start and animate. All right. So what's going to happen is that actually, let me first go ahead and go inside the camera, right? I'm inside the camera right now, like that. And we can then go ahead and go to view and lock camera to view, right? Actually, I think we reduced the focal length. I'm actually going to increase it back again because I don't think it made that big of a difference. I think it just makes it look worse. So I'm just going to set it there. And again, rotate the watch upside down and go back so that the logo is in the correct position where we want it to be. So let's start from here. Let's place our camera here. This is going to be the start point. And this should be something like this should be the end point, right? So let's start from here. Just place your camera where you want the start point to be and make sure that you have the timeline down there. So click this button right here, whatever this has, just click this and click timeline so that you get the timeline. Bring it up like that, and now you're going to see that we have a lot of frames which we can work with. So just go to frame number 1, and then with your camera selected, make sure your camera is selected. That's very important, by the way. Press I on your keyboard, and then you can set a keyframe for location, rotation, and scale. Or you can just do location or rotation because we're not going to be changing the scale, but I just like to do it. Like to do all of them. And then you can just move. Actually, we can move forward in time first, like that. 40. Let's go 40 frames ahead, and then just set your last point and press I again, and location, rotation, and scale, like that. Now if you play between these frames, if you basically if you go to the first frame and you press spacebar, it is gonna start to animate. But the problem with this is that if I actually get out of my render mode, because you can't really see it properly, if I go to my solid view mode, you're gonna see that the animation speeds up and then slows down, right? That's not what we want. So we're gonna select both of the keyframes, right click, and we're gonna go ahead and go to the interpolation mode and set it to linear. Now you're gonna see that it's gonna be a linear animation. But right now, again, another problem which we're facing is the fact that it's very fast. So I'm going to select this keyframe, move it forward to something like 80 frames, because 40 frames was too less. I think 80 frames is fine. Perfect. So 80 frames, up to 80 frames, this animation is going to be playing. And on frame number 81, I want this scene to basically change. So let's go to frame number 81, and then we can move on to our second shot, which is going to be this one right here. Okay. So for this, I'm going to have to rotate the watch back again, like that. And let's press Alt while being here. Actually, let's go inside the camera first. And just place the camera right here. So it should be, one sec. Okay. So basically, it's starting from somewhere here. Make sure the camera is selected, because you can see down there that we are not seeing any keyframes because the camera is not selected. So if you select the camera, the keyframes are going to come back up. Put your camera right here. Make sure to go into render mode so you can like see better, see what your render really looks like, and add a keyframe. Go forward in time, something like 150 should, or 160 should probably be fine, and then just move your camera to be right here. Okay, press I and then set a keyframe. Let's go back and let's see. I think it looks pretty good. The only thing I want to do again is I want to set the interpolation mode back to linear again. Yep, looks pretty good. So that's the second shot. And I honestly think the lighting in this looks a little weird for some reason. So what I'm actually going to do is that I'm going to, let me select this light right here, this one, the fill light. And I'm going to reduce the power of this to something like 30. Because I think it's a little overexposed. Yeah, now it's better. Definitely better, definitely. Don't worry about the image being a little flat. We are gonna add some more contrast later on. But yeah, let's go to frame number 161, and with that we can move on to the next shot, which is gonna be, okay, it's just a shot of the dial. So let's go close, something like that. Let me actually take a shot from this angle. Actually, no, this angle is fine. Let's start from here. Select the camera, press I, add a keyframe, go forward in time, something like 240 should be fine, and then go to your final position, something like that, press I, and go back, and that looks pretty good. I honestly really like the camera motion of this. Right click the keyframe, interpolation mode, set that to linear, and that looks pretty good. But now one problem which we're facing is the fact that this animation basically, our timeline is not big enough for the whole animation. So we can just change the end frame. Instead of 250, let's just set it to something like 600, just so that we get extra space. Now we can just drag this out to extend the viewport, extend the timeline to 600 frames. Perfect. Let's go to frame number 241, and let's go to the next shot. Okay, the next shot is going to be of the hands moving, basically. Just a shot of the dial, like that. Something like that should be the start point. Add a keyframe, go forward in time, something like that, and then set the final position to be something like this. And then that doesn't look good. Right click, set it to linear. Let's see. No, that actually doesn't look good. I'm gonna have to do something else. Let's go back and let's go to frame 360. And I think something like that should be a good position. Press I, take it back to 360. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We're gonna also animate the hand. Actually, we can just go ahead and do that right now because it's pretty straightforward. So the hand should start animating somewhere around here on this frame right here. Okay. Actually, we can just go one frame before this just to be on the safe side. And so we can select the hand. Now make sure you select the right hand, the correct hand to move. I think this is the second hand. So we can just select this one. Press I to add a keyframe and add a keyframe right here. Then we can go forward in time, something like that, to basically to the last frame of this animation. So frame number 360, and then we can press R and Z on our keyboard to basically set the final point of this. I think that should be a good final point. If you want it to be like completely accurate, so you can basically count the time between the what do you call it, between the frames, right? And then you can basically sort of have it move ahead that much time, right? But I'm not going to do that because it's like I don't see a point because it's not going to be that visible. Just make sure to set the interpolation mode to linear. Actually, no, I think it is pretty fast. It's a little too fast. So what we can do is we can just set this keyframe to maybe something like 440. Still too fast. Select it and maybe 540, 520. Still too fast, so we can also select this and bring it back. I think now it looks pretty good. Yeah, because now it's relatively slow. And we don't really need to move the other hands because their movement is so minute that it's not going to be visible. It's not going to be distinguishable in our scene. And so now the final shot is going to be, what do you call it? Off the whole watch. So let's select the camera again. Let's go to frame number 361. So this shot is probably going to start from somewhere here. Press I to add a keyframe. Let's go ahead in time and let's set the final position to this. Right click and set the interpolation mode to linear. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. One thing is, honestly, if I'm being very honest, I don't like the lighting of this at all. So I think we are gonna have to do some tweaks with the lighting, because I think this one just looks way, way, way better than this one. So I think we are gonna have to do some tweaks with this. I think it's mainly just the problem is that it's very overexposed. So I think we're gonna have to work on that. Let's just tweak the lighting. But yeah, the animation part is essentially just complete. You can look at the animation from this in this view just to see how it looks, because this is obviously smoother than the render view. But yeah, the animation, you can like change the times, you can change sort of the speed, you can even add like slow motion and stuff like that. But yeah, we also need to add depth of field, which we're gonna do right now. All right, so the way depth of field works is that basically we're gonna be adding, let me actually just go to rendered mode first, and let me show you how, like what sort of options we have for the depth of field. So if I select my camera and I go to my camera settings, you can see I can go down to depth of field. If I turn it on, we basically have sort of two options, right? The first option is going to be adding a focus object, one object which is going to stay in focus throughout the whole scene. The second option is just setting a manual distance, right? Now, distance is very hard to sort of configure, because you have to like, manually configure it. Plus, it's like very minute adjustments, so it's like hard to sort of get correct. However, focus object is the way we're going to be doing this. So it's actually pretty easy. Now, if you want your object, if you want your focus to be on one point, let's say one of these hands, throughout the whole scene, then you can just click this dropper tool right here and select your hand, right? But the problem is that in other scenes, for example, this scene and this shot and this shot, we want the focus to be on those exact objects, right? So that's why we're not going to be setting it to any object which is in the watch. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to go to add, we're going to go down to empty, and we're going to click plane axes, right? So now we have an empty object basically, which we are going to be using to sort of focus the camera, right? So let me actually just drag this out, and let me right click and new collection. Let me call this collection camera, and I'm going to drag both of these in. Oops, my bad. I'm gonna drag the camera and the empty objects inside the camera folder, because obviously the empty is related to the camera, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to camera settings, and let me cross out this focus object, and instead of that we're gonna be selecting this empty object, and I'm just gonna name this focus object. Okay, so let's go to our first frame and the first basically shot. So with this selected, I'm going to be right clicking here and vertical split. Let's create a new viewport so that we can sort of get a better idea of what we're working with, and we can move our focus point easily. But right now the problem is we have selected lock camera to view, so that's why our camera is moving with us. So I'm going to uncheck that. Now we can just move freely. So let me go back again so that it locks back to the original position. And now what I can do is I can, with that focus object selected, I can just press G and press X to move it in the X-axis like that, something like that. Let me zoom in and just make sure to position it in the right position. Something like that should be good. GY, like that. Okay, that is perfect. Oops, my bad. Let me unlock this as well so that we can zoom in and see how it looks. I think it looks pretty decent, right? I think the depth of field adds a lot of like sort of character to this animation. And let me actually show you a before and after. So this is with depth of field. Let me turn all those off. This is with the depth of field, and this is without depth of field. So you can see it really adds a lot of sort of depth to it. I mean, it obviously adds depth to it, but yeah, it just looks really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to frame number 80, which is where this shot basically ends. And with the focus object selected, I'm going to press I on my keyboard, and we're going to add a keyframe for location, rotation, and scale, right? Although we're only going to be changing the location because, what do you call it? When we move on to the next frame, the frame 81, you can see that the position of this should be somewhere else. It should be in the front. So that's why with frame 81, while being on frame 81, we can press G, Shift Z, and move it forward like that. So we're essentially just telling it to do that transition in just one frame, so that, because we don't want the transition to like take that long. Actually, we are going to be exploring the different options we have for that in just a bit. But right now, let's place it here, press I again, and add another keyframe. Now, if you want your focus to basically change immediately, right? If you want this whole shot to be in focus, then this is what you would do. However, if you want your focus to sort of like dial in and sort of like be a little delayed, like the sample animation that I showed you, what you can do is you can select the second keyframe like that, and you can move it ahead a little bit, like maybe 20 frames ahead, something like that. And now what this is going to do is that it's going to sort of start out as blurry, and then it's going to sort of focus in on that object. I think it looks pretty good. You can even move it ahead, something like that might be good. Let's see. Yeah, maybe that's a little too slow. I think 20 frames should be fine. Yeah, so I think that looks pretty good. So we are basically done up till here. Now we can move on to the next sort of shot, which is going to be, if I move ahead, you can see that it's going to be this shot. Now in this shot, luckily the focus point is the same, so I don't think we need to make that many changes. I don't think we need to make any changes at all, in fact, because this is in focus, everything is in focus basically, so I think we're good. But when basically the last frame of this shot and the next frame of this shot, this is where the transition of the focal point is going to be, right? So let's go to the last frame of this shot, press I to add a keyframe, make sure your focus object is selected, press I to add a keyframe, and add a keyframe like that. And now you're going to see that this yellow bar is going to appear. What this means is that from this point to this point, the position of this object has not changed, right? Both these keyframes are basically the same. Another way to do this would just be to copy this keyframe and just come here and paste it there. But I mean, the way that we did it was slightly easier in my opinion. But yeah, let's go to frame number 241, basically the next frame. And okay, for some reason the watch was upside down, so I'm just gonna rotate that. And we can press G and Shift Z to rotate it in all axes except for the Z axis, and just place it right here. Let me zoom in to see if everything is fine. Also, Alt middle mouse button, that's what you use to basically change the rotation, change the pivot of the rotation of your camera. So if I want to rotate my camera across this Rolex logo, I'm going to click that, Alt middle click that, and then I can rotate my camera along that pivot, right? But yeah, I think this is a good position. Let's press I, add a keyframe, and perfect. And even this, I wanted to have a little bit of, I wanted to have a little bit of delay before we sort of start, before we get in focus. One problem which you might notice is that it's sort of hard to select the keyframe, so you can just zoom in like that. And the more you zoom in, the more distance the keyframes are going to have, so you can like easily adjust them just like that. And then when you're done, you can just unzoom them. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Yep, I think it looks pretty good. We are going to be cutting this inside of Unreal, inside of Premiere Pro. I don't know why I said Unreal Engine. But yeah, so don't worry about some frames are going to be a little weird looking, but don't worry about that. We're going to be cutting this animation up inside of Premiere Pro. So let's move ahead, and I think the focus point should be the same for this shot as well, because obviously the focus point is the same, right? I think it's fine. Yeah. Alright, so I think we are basically done with the animation. Only thing I don't like about this animation is the lighting. So let's go ahead and tweak the lighting a little bit, and then we can sort of move on to just basically rendering this.